Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm introducing my 14.16 support tier list. So if you enjoy our content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. To begin with, there was a huge set of changes towards Senna. This is the highlight of this patch, if anything. There were no direct changes to any other support. Senna was the primary kind of push this patch, as Riot wanted to get her off primarily just carry and lethality builds as support, as she was being predominantly played in competitive alongside the likes of Ornn, Tahm Kench, and just tanks to utilize the damage she could do on fairly low econ, combining with like soul gathering and just like harass in laning phase. It made her quite oppressive there. For solo queue, she wasn't finding the same pairing, so they wanted to encourage her more towards some tanky variations and some enchanter variations. Obviously, we now have seen the knock-on effect of this. She is incredibly dominant with Echoes of Helia. She is arguably the best champion in the game at the moment, alongside the likes of Jhin, who is also performing very well. Both these picks doing incredibly well in the bot lane at the moment. But let's cover the rest of the changes. So the D tier stays the exact same. We have Twitch, we have MF, and we have Ashe making up the lower half of ADCs, who at some point or another were functional support champions, but have either had their builds kind of neglected, don't function with the current itemization, have been heavily nerfed because of their strength and competitive in Ashe's case, and are just not really functioning that well at the moment. Obviously, in Ashe's case, she was performing really well on like high CDR Bloodsong variations, where she could really make use of her oppressive laning phase with Halo Blades and push people over. Of course, almost all functionality of that has been nerfed. Bloodsong has been nerfed, her builds have been nerfed, she has been nerfed. Halo Blades has been nerfed for ranged champions, and it's just led to her being very, very underpowered in solo queue at the moment. Alongside these three champions, we have Malphite, Veigar, and Hui. Veigar and Hui, obviously mages which have been experimented with in the support role. In Hui's case, he has never really found the success which I know a lot of people were kind of hoping for. He needs a bit too much gold to really function here, and oftentimes it can be quite punishing if you don't really have the pushing power. In Veigar's case, it's pretty self-explanatory. He really needs to stack, and if he can't continuously get Qs on the enemy and farm up to get like some durability and obviously like AP through like Roa or Luden's companion, it really depends on what you're building. And Rabadon's is like second item, you can feel really punished on this champion. Of course, he also had the AP ratio change to kind of encourage him out of the bot lane, which did indirectly obviously hit support Veigar, and the champ just isn't performing that well at the moment. In Malphite's case, it's very gimmicky. Obviously, you just play around the ultimate and you're harassed with Q, which can be functional obviously, but it does underperform quite heavily. Moving on to the C tier, two champions for which remain here. Obviously, we have Yuumi and Swain. In Swain's case, we now know the changes and the scope of what they're going to be. I believe it is going to be 14.8 onward, 14.18 onwards, where we're gonna like actually get these. 14.17 is World's Patch, 14.18 is new season, and I think Freak said it's going to be like 14.19 they're aiming for. They're trying to like amp up his ability to be more consistent, buffing the E, changing the ultimate slightly, making the W, from what I know, a bit more aggressive on the slow, but maybe a bit less on the damage side of things, and the Q a bit better at being like more usable rather than just being a shotgun, making him obviously very oppressive into melee supports. At the moment, he does underperform quite heavily in the support role though, and he does belong in the C tier. In Yumi's case, she's incredibly reliant on like certain pairings to really gain functionality here, and in general, just as a champion, she is underpowered intentionally. Riot know that she's a frustration point, and even supporting such a low win rate in the past has had egregious ban rates, and this champion will never really ever, I believe, to like be in a situation where she can thrive and be healthy for the game, which is unfortunate, but comes with the playstyle of the champion. One champion dropping down from the B tier into the C tier, and that is Renata. Renata's been underperforming for a while. Both the Locket and Shirelia variations just haven't really been finding the success you'd hope for. The champion's incredibly unpopular. The pairings aren't great at the moment, with like Jhin and MF being really strong within the meta. Renata really struggles as a pairing alongside these picks. On top of this, like Shirelia enough on 14.10 hurt a lot of champions, like your Twisted Fates mids, Twisted Fate mid, some of your enchanters. Renata also took a bit of a hit from that. And yeah, in Renata's case, she really just hasn't found the traction which she really needs. And yeah, she belongs in the C tier for the moment. Teemo is very gimmicky. He leads off the B tier. Obviously, he's very low elo skewed. And I know a lot of people are like, why do you have Teemo in the B tier? But obviously, like, from the point of like a high elo player, that would look really troll. But this champion definitely does have decent functionality here, can work quite nicely as a counter pick into double auto attack based champions. On top of this, he scales really aggressively. His shrooms can be really valuable. But yeah, if you're like an elite support player, then yeah, this pick can look very troll. It doesn't have the same level of traction as a lot of the other champions within the B tier, especially into those higher tiers of play. But Teemo, still a solid B tier, and you can definitely make him work in like gold to like emerald, for example. Bard is a champion I've actually considered moving down to the C tier for a while. He is also someone who's really struggled with some of the support item nerfs, direct nerfs to him, trying to push him away from being so strong as like an individual champion, as he was at one point like 1v1ing ADCs. We're kind of far away from that now, where he was like really dominant on like Frozen Heart, Bloodsong pairing. The champion is definitely struggling a lot more, especially in the lower ranks, and yeah, I'd kind of recommend avoiding Bard until maybe they give him a buff, or they like have some sort of build variation change around. Nico, also underperforming to a degree in the support role. I'd just consider her as like an okay pick. Definitely can be quite oppressive early onto the game, and the ult can be really valuable, but if you're not able to get that traction in the game, then kind of akin to Swain, you can struggle definitely, but the util she has is stronger than Swain's, and I would recommend her above him for that reason primarily. Swain is more obviously situational into melee options. Pantheon, also going to be my B tier. Pantheon has had like an up and down rollercoaster of support role. He's definitely in a fine spot at the moment compared to where he has been in the past. In the past, he was very weak and like very popular, but was like popularized because of competitive and his ability to get really early traction and like push in the lane by just being very overwhelming. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes to him, his builds, the systems within the game, and at the moment, he's doing pretty well compared to, yeah, just like where he's been in the past, but you are still a very volatile champion. You do want to snowball, you do want to get like your eclipses, your cleavers, and like utilize those spikes to really push through the game and get those advantages. Morgana, that's not Morgana, that's Pike. Morgana, not doing too well. She just hasn't been doing well for a while. As a support option, she's been very mediocre, and this champion obviously wants setup for her Qs. She wants certain pairings which can like utilize the functionality of her kit. The Black Shield oftentimes can be the reason why you want to play this champion, but then sometimes can really feel lackluster as an ability. Obviously, into AD champions, which are very heavily reliant on their CC spells, it can feel quite powerful, and there's definitely strength to a pick like Morgana, but her W can kind of feel like a bit of a null spell in the bot lane, and yeah, she really struggles to get much higher than the B tier, but you can do a decent amount of damage on this champion, especially if you're like speccing into something like a Leandri's. There is definitely strength to be had there. Just not something I'd really recommend over some of the other picks in the A tier and arguably higher B tier. I'd honestly recommend something like Karma over Morgana at the moment, for example. Amumu, very simple to play champion. His itemization's been better in the past. Like, he really misses Even Shroud, and obviously the mana cost changes towards his Q, and the damage on that spell have definitely hurt him and kind of like pushed him out. But Amumu just in general at the moment is in a very strong spot. The champion obviously has a lot of hard CC, very easy to play, and that can definitely be rewarding, especially if you're pairing it with like MF and Samira, which like were more traditionally some of his stronger pairings, where you could really utilize they could utilize his CC and be like really potent off of it. Camille, also with my B tier, she's a solid carry option. Obviously, Camille has been stronger in the past when Bloodsong was like really, really powerful. Bloodsong was heavily nerfed compared to where it used to be, and Camille obviously lost a lot of power from that. She also received direct nerfs to try and push her back towards the top lane, which were pretty successful. Camille is a very solid top laner and arguably very strong in elite at the moment. So yeah, Camille, solid B tier option. If you're looking for something with solid offensive capabilities early, decent scaling, good solo carry potential, arguably. Then yeah, come on, find a champion for that kind of space. Karma, gonna be towards the high end of my B tier. They've buffed her a substantially large amount, which has definitely like enabled her to climb up the tier list. She was in my C tier for a while, as she was underperforming ever since they kind of like heavily nerfed her off the like Malignant's powerful lane Karma, which was taking over for a bit. Since then, obviously, they've buffed her E-Shield quite substantially, and she's in a pretty solid B-tier spot. Someone who you want to utilize for her harass early on into the game, and then utilize that E-Shielding later on, making sure you're getting a good amount of rotations of it. Obviously, you do a decent amount of damage, and you still want to be able to apply things like Imperial Mandate and Malignance if you are opting into those build paths. The other champions here are actually going to be dropped down from the A tier. So, Blitzcrank, Fresh, and Nautilus all drop from the A tier into my B tier. In exchange, I'm moving Pyke up from the B tier to the A tier. So, I'll cover the first three. In the case of Blitz, Fresh, and Nautilus, they've been underperforming for a while. Nautilus obviously is incredibly popular. This pick is played into mostly everything as like just a good engage option, but has been faltering a bit more as of recent. The Warmog's nerf compared with like other nerfs to like support items have hurt him. Of course, he's also very volatile, which can definitely hurt him, especially if you're not that proficient at the champion. There are lots of good answers to him at the moment. Brom's surge in popularity definitely hurts these picks. Brom is a very solid answer into good engage options. Fresh has just been underperforming for a while, and Blitzcrank got nerfed a substantial amount. They took away some of his W power, they took away some of his passive shield. I believe they also took away some of his base health and armor, which just over time has made him like a less forgiving pick, when like he was already previously like Blitz was a very tanky upfront support, and like, even if you like missed your hook, you could still act as like a relatively good frontline option. But the nerfs continuously have just hurt him to the point where you're not really as reliable, and if you don't land those hooks, you would definitely feel it and definitely be punished for it. In Pyke's case, people were commenting on my last video saying I had Pyke too low, and I actually agree. I think Pyke is a good A tier pick. I put him down previously because he got nerfed, or like with the W cooldown, and I believe some degree of W movement speed. And I dropped him down as like a response to those nerfs. He had been slightly on the rise since then, but also probably was sat as like a low A tier option, not quite like a high B tier, which is what I was rating him at previously. He's still very early game skewed. He's still elite skewed. He's being nerfed in 14.17, which will probably lead to him being dropped back down into the B tier. But I do agree, Pyke, solid A tier option. If you can snowball and snowball your advantage early game, you can really like easily make this. Okay, maybe not easily, but you can really make this pick work and definitely get a lot of LP if you are proficient at the champion. Towards the low end of the A tier, so we have Fiddle and we have Lulu. Lulu not really benefiting from the champions which are being played like primarily at the moment, like the MF Jhin. Both these champions don't function that well with Lulu. Jhin Lulu is a horrible combo. Like, you just don't want to pick these two champions together. They have very bad synergy and like arguably anti-synergy. In Fiddle's case, he's very niche. Like, this champion is very unpopular in the support role, but he's still a very powerful pick. If you can land good ultimates and like utilize the vision control this champion has, and he has a level of harass with both EQ and arguably W, even though it's a bit shorter range, this pick can definitely function quite well in the support role, and I think he's a pretty underrated A tier champion at the moment. But I have a couple of those. In Alistar's case, he's actually low A tier. I could move Alistar down to the B tier. I think this champion could also follow the same boat as Nautilus, Fresh, and Blitz. I'm not fully sold and locked on this pick, but he does have a good time into engage options where you can really utilize his ability to just respond and his tankiness with his ultimate. There's definitely power there, and with some of the other picks not performing as well, I think he deserves a spot within the A tier, but he's a low A tier option, and if you're not proficient at the pick, then I definitely recommend other things for the most part. Zilean and Tahm Kench. In Zilean's case, unpopular pick, always has been. The champion's still pretty decent though. He has both the tank and the AP variation, and both function quite well at the moment. In Tahm Kench's case, he's really come up as like an underrated support pick, with just like primarily like your Heartsteel Grasp variation, where he acts as a really good frontline with strong damage capability. Obviously, if he does fall behind, he does have a fallback play pattern where you're just ulting your ADC. But if you're ahead of a curve, this champion can be really offensive and like play really aggressively into a lot of lanes and be very tanky as an upfront, as just an upfront tank. So yeah, Tahm Kench, I wouldn't recommend sleeping on him. He's definitely got a lot of power within the support role. Previously, I would have hated on Tahm Kench. I think the champion was, in the past, used primarily just for his ultimate and not the rest of his kit, but with the state of the items at the moment, like Warmorgs, Heartsteel being very strong options for him, then yeah, I think he's very deserving of a solid A tier spot at the moment. And same in a way goes for some of the other options here, like the Zacs, the Gallios, the Shens. I have these three champions together as they all, in a way, are niche, but like can utilize Warmorgs, utilize Heartsteel, have good not disabling. I'm using the wrong word again. The word will come to me at some point. I always forget. But yeah, their kits are really strong for being able to just deny engage and being able to utilize them for engage. In Shen's case and in Galio's case, their ultimates are very powerful tools to mitigate damage. Being able to shield your allies can be really powerful. Zac's case, he's great engage with his E, and it can make him a very oppressive support to play against if you are ahead of a curve and looking for dive angles. Yeah, these three picks, very strong at the moment. Definitely recommend giving them a go if you're like a favourable tank support player. Moving on from them, we also have Maokai, which actually also I probably should have just grouped him with the rest of them here. He's a very good support pick when for how easy he is to play. His ultimate is a great engage tool. His E sets up great amounts of vision. He does decent damage. Obviously, when Trailblazer was stronger, he was benefiting from that, but it's still a very good item on him. He can opt into some more offensive options like a Leandri, but if you're just looking to play standard tank, then yeah, he's still in a great spot at the moment. Trailblazer, Dabans, both these items can work really nicely on him. Warmorgs can give him good tankiness, and yeah, you should be good to go. Vel'Koz and Lux are two of my AP support options with a level of carry potential and burst potential. Both these picks pair quite nicely with some of the more lane pushing pairings where you don't really need a level of frontline and you can just play full under their tower. Like things like Caitlyn, for example, can work really nicely with these pairings. Like Lux can pair really nicely with Caitlyn for like the traps, shoving under tower. Obviously, we saw T1 play Kate Lux like literally today, which is always nice to see. Kate is also being buffed in 14.17, which should indirectly help Lux support. In Vel'Koz's case, he's been a pretty good support ever since his buffs, and yeah, I think he's really deserving of a spot here. Does good damage. His he is a great tool for like disengaging, and yeah, I think he's kind of slept on at the moment. Someone who I think probably deserves to be dropped down from the S tier to the A tier is Xerath. The champion's still good. I'd still rate Xerath over Vel'Koz, just not to the same degree as some of the S tier options. And the other champion which I'm knocking down from the S tier into the A tier is also Sona. The rise of Senna has actually hurt Sona as they fulfilled pretty similar roles within the game, being both like heal shielders with movement speed and like good team fighting tools. Senna is just overperforming at the moment, and indirectly that does just hit Sona a bit. Sona also probably should she was a low S tier option. Like I think this champion was underrated, but like people didn't like playing with Sona. I mean, the champ can feel quite frustrating in like the tools, and sometimes like when it needs to stack up, it can feel quite punishing for the ADC. But she was an underrated pick. But I'm gonna drop her down from the S tier to the A tier, like a mid A tier option. The other picks here are Shaco, who is still a very solid support option at the moment. His traps can provide really valuable like setup for objectives. His harass is really good with his ease and just his traps in lane as well. His build is pretty good for support Shaco at the moment, whether you're opting into like your Blackfires, your Leandries, and then like kind of going off that, like he really does value Zacs quite heavily as well. Yeah, Shaco, really solid A tier AP support pick. Soraka, also with my A tier. Soraka kind of just sits next to Sona at this point. Both these champions are still good picks, as are a lot of my A tier. I'd argue the only two picks which I'm less favourable on in the A tier at the moment are Lulu and Alistar, but that's mainly because of the ADC picks within the meta at the moment. But yeah, Soraka, Sona, both really solid enchanter options. Rakan, Braum, and Rel make up the rest of my A tier. In Rakan's case, he's actually performing a lot worse at the moment. He actually can sit alongside Lulu and Alistar. The champion benefited more when Xayah was stronger. Xayah, of course, not doing too well at the moment. He also doesn't have great itemization. He doesn't benefit from Warmogs as much as a lot of the other supports. He tends to still be pretty locked to Zeke's first, and then Warmogs is a solid second option. Shrelia being nerfed also hurt him pretty hard, as he was someone who could also opt into that if he was looking for something a bit more offensive as first item. In Braum's case, he's still a great answer to engage options, but as more enchanters rise into the meta, he will also get weaker. I've said this before, and I stand by this, that Braum is as good as the champion. Braum is a good answer to the champion which you're playing into, and if the enemy champion is an enchanter, then that can really struggle. If it's engaged, he can really benefit from that. He also really benefits from certain pairings, like you don't want to pair Braum with Jhin, and obviously Jhin, very strong, very popular at the moment. Pairing Braum with something like a Kog'Maw can lead to a lot of wins if you're playing it into the right combination. So yeah, don't sleep on those two champions as a duo, and yeah, you should be good to go. In Rose's case, she's a great engage option. If people don't flash your combo, then you usually just win. That's how a lot of this champion goes. Obviously, on a more serious note, the pick's still great into a lot of the options at the moment. Does work quite nicely into Braum. It's one of those few engage options which can actually function quite nicely into Braum. The itemization is still your Warmogs, and yeah, her engage is really valuable. Her pairings a bit weaker at the moment, but she still pairs really nicely with the likes of MF. Doesn't pair as well with Jhin as some of these other engage options that you want to pair Jhin primarily with wave pushing either artillery mages, things like Lux, Vel'Koz, Xerath can work quite nicely with Jhin. They definitely do benefit from him, or certain offensive engage options can work quite nicely with Jhin. Moving on to the S tier, so we have LeBlanc. LeBlanc, still my underrated pick in the support role, has gained a bit more play rate, not quite enough, and she is getting nerfed in 14.15, 14.17, I've gone the wrong way with my patches, which will definitely hurt her, and I imagine she'll probably just drop out the support role completely when she does get nerfed. Probably will actually. I mean, if she stays within the support role, she'll drop down to the A tier. If she just loses all of her play rate here, then yeah, she'll just be removed. But LeBlanc is an underrated S tier pick. I've said it since she got buffed that this champion is in a great spot for the support role, and yeah, definitely works really nicely as like a low XP needing mage who has very offensive damage capability early on to the game and can oftentimes just one-shot marksman if ever ahead of the curve, which can be really valuable for your team comp. Taric, underrated pick. Obviously he's very unpopular and he's always going to be unpopular, but if you pair him with something like a Nyla or you're playing him into the right combos, he can be really valuable for your team comp, and yeah, definitely a niche S tier pick, but still very strong at the moment. And then moving on to the more popular things. So Janna, Nami, and Milio. Actually, no, there's more than that. Janna, Nami, Milio, and Seraphine make up my S tier of enchanters. All four of these picks are great at the moment. Nami for some of her pairings. Seraphine is just generalistically like the best she's ever been for support, which is great to see. Obviously, she's being nerfed in 14.17, which does hurt her quite a bit. Milio doing a lot better with the changes he received to his Q. That is a very strong tool within his kit. Also, the E being buffed up later on to the game, also really strong for him. Janna has been strong for a long time at this point, and still very oppressive if played correctly, combined with like her W harass, very strong champion. The more offensive options, obviously we've lost Xerath from the S tier. Brand and Zyra are still great picks here. I'd honestly put them below the enchanters, as I think the enchanters are just so strong at the moment. But yeah, both these picks do so much damage over time and can be really valuable for your team comps, especially for some of their carry potential they can have. But top of my S tier, still going to be Leona. I think she's the best engage option you have access to at the moment, and probably the one you want to look at just playing the most in the situations where you can. But like a lot of the S tier, I think this S tier is really, really strong for like what it can enable or what it provides at the moment. And then my two S plus champions, Poppy, who seems to always switch back every other patch. No, I think Poppy is really good at the moment, and like we've seen a lot of people bringing it out competitive, which is great to see because I think Poppy has definitely been under the radar for a long time, especially with like Halo Blade's Blood Song, Deadman's 3-item core, and then like Symbiotic Souls. This champion's incredibly oppressive. It does so much damage, it has so much shutdown capability. For a pick which should be primarily utilized as a counter pick in support, she's just generalistically too good at the moment, which is why I think she is very deserving of an S tier or S tier spot, S plus or S tier spot. In Senna's case, she's just the best support in the game at the moment, hands down. Her build is way too overtuned. This is the Echo of Helia, Moonstone, Dreammaker, Echoes of Helia, Moonstone, Dawn core, 3-item core. It's incredibly powerful. She can really comfortably carry games with this bit. Well, she can't carry games, but she can enable people to carry games really easily with this build. Her shielding is absurd. Her healing is absurd. There's a lot of value to this pick. Obviously, being heavily nerfed in 14.17, rightfully so. But if you want free LP, Senna is the champion I'd recommend looking at. It is being banned a lot though, and if you can't really get access to Senna, then something like Seraphine, a great enchanter option, and definitely something I'd recommend at the moment. But those are my thoughts on the 14.16 support tier list. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one. Play Senna if you want LP. Goodbye.